Talking all that bullshit. I'ma put it to you like this, yo.
This is for the nerds, this is for the brainiacs, this what we deserve. Go ahead and play it back, you ain't gonna touch me, you not gonna do nothing, you are not above me. I bet you wish you was me, I know it, I know.
What is poppin', everybody? And welcome back to another special episode of the Only Friends podcast. Well, you know, it's me and my only friends, which includes, but is not limited to, the Magic the Gathering professional, Landon Tice. What's poppin', Magic?
You mean Eric Froelich?
I'm looking at you, man. You're a professional. Look at you. You play all day, every day.
There's a new set that came out, and I'm very excited about it. So
what does that mean?
Every couple months, they come out with like new cards.
Okay.
And new things that kind of keep it interesting.
It means he has to play during the podcast.
That's what it means.
Well, in my defense, games normally take less than 5 minutes, and this one's kind of running a little bit over.
It's like the new set, but just a little bit longer.
No, I mean, sometimes you just have to play long games, you know?
You're an idiot.
Sometimes you play hands that take 10 minutes, and sometimes you play hands that take 30 seconds.
Yeah.
The game is the game.
What's poppin', Torty? How you feeling?
I don't know. Is it Steelers season yet?
No, it's Pirates, buddy.
Bro.
Did you hear about the new rumor?
There's so many.
There's so many. Oh, maybe this one is old then.
The Trevor Lawrence one?
Trevor Lawrence,
It's not old. That's the new one. The Jags came out today and said there's under no circumstance would they trade to the Steelers or any other team, but
Of course, they have to say that.
They gotta say
and
that.
I would say that considering the source that I saw it from was Andrew Filipponi, which he's an idiot.
Right.
and everything he says is completely wrong. So once I saw that, I completely dismissed it. But would we entertain it? Would we like to see Trevor Lawrence in a Steelers uniform?
I told Conrad I didn't understand why I wasn't more excited over it.
I'm floored by you saying that.
I think it's
because you realize it's bullshit.
maybe, but I mean, you know, like, I think back to like other times that they've made big free agent moves. I mean, Bettis was one of the most epic draft day trades that they've ever made.
I mean, no one saw
who drafted him.
The Rams. He played there for 2 seasons.
Lawrence is good at football.
He is good at football. I just, like, you know, if they linked us to Tua tomorrow, would you get pumped? I mean, granted, he's hurt. He's hurt.
I would.
Would you?
To a six.
I would not get pumped.
I would not
be excited about Tua.
Actually, maybe not just because of all of his, you know.
Look, he might die on the field, but he is good before then.
We're linked to Stafford right now. We're like the odds-on favorite to get Stafford.
Really?
I mean, like, this stuff just doesn't excite me.
Right.
Like, when I look at the market, there are 5 guys and everyone else. And it's like, okay, look, if we can get a Trevor Lawrence, fantastic. If we have to mortgage the future to do so, less exciting.
Right.
But it also indicates to me, with them being linked to everybody like this, that they're not high on Fields. Which
it does make a lot of sense.
Right.
I get it.
Exactly.
I mean, I get it. I'm not bullish on Fields either. And maybe Tomlin knows a lot more than I do. He did choose to bench him halfway through the season.
He seems like
they haven't signed him yet.
A really good backup / okay starter on a bad team.
Yeah, I don't.
That's kind of where I'm at with him.
Yeah, I don't see him.
He's not elite.
Maybe. Well,
maybe he is.
I mean, we don't know.
It's true.
I don't really see him as like the backup type. Dynamic players like that, I don't feel like often fit the backup role very well.
No, right.
I think he can be a starter in the NFL. I just don't know if like he's the answer for Pittsburgh, but he might be. A running quarterback might be exactly what Arthur Smith needs to give the 1-2 combo. They're talking about re-signing Najee, which excites me. I'm the only Steeler who's excited about this.
You are.
Steeler fan about this.
I like Najee.
He's a fucking
big, tough
workhorse. He's everything that they need. They're trying to tender. Warren also. Did you see the billboard that this asshat? I can't even remember his name. I haven't blocked on Twitter. I can't take it.
Oh man.
Did you see the billboard he put
No.
up? Let me search Steelers billboard on Twitter. What
are we looking for? What's the asset?
Just search Steelers
billboard and it should come up.
It should come up.
Steelers
billboard. It says, the standard is mediocrity. Trade Tomlin or sell the team, Rooney. We've had enough. Paid for by Kevin Adams. Now, this Kevin Adams guy.
I don't even know who that is.
So he hosts a tailgate that he charges, like, who knows how much money for people to come
Oh,
to.
I saw this.
Already dislike him.
Yeah.
and,
Tailgate. What are we doing here? You're supposed to give away free sit.
and he co-hosts one of the Barstool, like local Barstool podcasts. But he's just so fucking insufferable.
Yeah.
Like, just I don't even want to say he's a typical Steelers fan because that's not true. I don't want to tarnish the the brand that is our fan base.
Yep.
Our fan base is great. This guy is just like the typical I know more than ownership kind of guy, where it's just like he thinks he's speaking on behalf of the majority.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're not. You're just, the people were upset at the end of the season and they bellyached a little bit, and they'll bellyache again when things don't go really well.
Right.
But when you reflect back on it all, everybody is going to be very excited to have Tomlin back in the war room, drafting.
Right.
Khan is now in his third season as GM. He's doing an amazing job. Nobody can argue that.
Like, if you want to act like you know more than ownership, don't act like that with one of the best ownerships of any franchise. Do it with the Pirates. You got the Pirates right next door with a terrible ownership.
That was the main.
He has a lot of things to say.
So aside from this guy having like a dozen racist tweets, like calling like,
of course,
he's like very anti-Asian, anti-black, and has tweeted as such a bunch. Which, of course, he publicly apologized for because now he's a public figure. But anyway, aside from that, the main criticisms were like, what are you doing?
Shitty.
This team has literally won for 5 decades straight, and you have the Pirates right next door. And that's where he got the original idea from. Originally, somebody said, sell the team.
Right, yeah. Saw that whole campaign.
Yeah, but it was like, that at least had a clear messaging behind it.
Yeah.
It's like, we don't want Nutting as the owner anymore.
Right.
He's not doing
right. There's nobody like calling to oust the Roonies.
No, nobody wants that. I mean, like, that would be the next step. To me, that's where my mind always goes. It's like when you want change at the top like that,
right?
Like, oh man, Tomlin's created this standard of mediocrity. Like, we got to get him out. It's like, well, what's next? Whenever you bring in like Rex Ryan and he just loses for 6 seasons straight, you want to get rid of Rooney,
right?
Like, what are we doing here?
Right.
Like some things just should be fun. It's the same thing. Like, did you want Ben to retire early when he was diminishing his last couple of years, or you just want to let him play it out?
I'm with you. Like, the Steelers being bad is this. This is the Steelers.
Yeah,
bad.
and that's so exciting.
Right. The Steelers bad is sneaking into the playoffs or missing it by 1 game. Teetering around 500. It's not
nice it is not to see Bubby Brister out there fucking going 3-14.
Right.
It's like, that's great.
Yeah.
We're living in
you
great
should be
times.
happy that like this is the bottom. We're at the bottom.
Yeah, and again,
they go up from here, baby.
There are like 5 or 6 guys in the league right now that are elite at the quarterback position. We don't have a shot to get any of them. And honestly, like, I'm not even sure that Jalen Hurts is
this
there.
audience thought we were done talking about Steelers
for sure.
after the Super Bowl.
Of course. But it's like, Allen, I guess Burrow, you would put in there for sure. Mahomes, Lamar, and then, Jalen is probably like flirting.
Jalen's in there.
Yeah. I mean, recency bias, of course.
Been
But
to
like
2 Super Bowls, won 1.
Yeah. So like Jalen solidified. But then you start to get like that next tier of like the Staffords, the Darnolds, the, Cousins, if you want to include him.
Yeah. He's
You like that?
you like that.
And then you have like CJ, he's a little bit undefined, and what's his face in Washington? I can't remember his last name.
Jaden. He's rookie, so he has a lot of potential.
Jaden was just CJ his rookie year, sophomore slump. Who knows? But
I think
those guys are like the next tier in the next bubble. But it's like, if you're not plucking from these pools, what shot do you have? So it's like, okay, we're going to be in limbo for a bit. We're going to see what this fucking kid can do. That's it. All right, moving on. We got our favorite segment. It's coming back, and it's coming back to its roots, nonetheless.
True.
We're bringing in the muck back today.
Let's go.
Maybe for a one-off. It might just be a one-time affair, but it's coming back with a true warrior out in the streets in the muck.
Man.
This actually doesn't even deserve an introduction, so I'm just going to cut right to it.
Oh, that means he wasn't prepared for it.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Why you blow up a spot like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect for him to do that.
So I got chastised yesterday.
Nah.
No names.
I was playing 1-3 at Red Rock, and I make a C bet for $4. I have my headphones on, and clearly I can see that this gentleman's not happy with something, and he's kind of going on. Take one of my headphones off, and he's talking about how you're just slowing down the game. Like, why are you purposely trying to make the dealer's job harder? To which I responded to saying, like, are you upset? Are you mad? I could see that he could see that I was annoyed just by the way that he was approaching this. And then he retorted by saying, well, obviously you can play however you'd like. It's just, and he was just X, Y, and Z-ing. I put my headphones back on. A few hands later, he leaves and he says, "Hey, tell Connie I gave you some shit."
I'm with him, my man.
So I was like, all right. I think what I was most annoyed with was just like his approach. And obviously I don't want to be a shit rag. And if betting odd numbers is a thing where it's actually slowing down the game and it's making the dealer's job hard, obviously I don't want to be that guy. I've only played maybe a dozen times this year, but all the other times I've ever played 1-3, I've never had anyone like have issue with my bet sizes.
So you bet $4 and
so
someone
I'm
got
not
mad.
sure if it's like, am I doing something that's out of line?
I think I've bet odd numbers before. People don't get angry.
Yeah, but you're a shit reg too.
Talk to him, Tortua.
I couldn't let that go. No, I think Guapo, you're a reasonable, open-minded person, and I think if you're gonna bet $4, just bet $5. That would be me. I would just bet $5 because it probably doesn't make a difference, and you're probably just making the pot bigger, which is good for you anyways. I think once you get above 5, like
once you're playing 2-5,
I think it's okay to bet 7 though. You know what I mean?
That's the thing. Like, what is the difference?
The difference is that like
your attitude.
your attitude, right? But like I think the difference for me is 4 to 5 doesn't really make a difference. So just bet the 5. But like there's a difference between betting 5 and betting 10 in comparison to the size of the pot. So then I think you can bet in between there, or like in between 10 and 20. Like I think that's when it actually really affects the game. Then I think it's okay. But like betting 4 when you could just bet 5, I think is where I would go.
I don't want to steal Berkey's thing, but he said this best. Go on, Berk.
Well, I have a few questions first. What is the average opening size pre?
I always do 11 or 12.
Okay.
Oh my God. Oh,
what does everybody else do?
10, 15, 20, 25, 30.
You're opening for 30 at 1-3, Connie?
Who knows what the fuck happens?
Okay.
Some people
maybe
do.
Connie's not the person we should be asking.
What's everybody else do?
Yeah. I bet 10.
When I played 1-2, 1-3,
1-3.
I opened to 10.
I mean, everybody else at the table.
$15.
Sorry.
$10.
I'm happy to hear what
It's
you guys do.
probably
I'm
10.
Whole
curious
numbers.
what
Always
the
whole
tables
numbers for the most. If anybody,
I disagree. Brian, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, I think it varies. I mean, you could be at a table and you'll see someone literally open to
You
like
see
6.
rainbow all the time?
You'll
You see
see
6, 8, 12?
Yeah, 15. You see a wide variety
What's
of opens.
rainbow? 1, 2, 3.
The 5 deuce and 1.
Oh, okay, so 8.
Yeah, but you do see. I think you it's not. There's not a standard bet in that stake level. No,
Okay,
yeah.
I think that entitles you to bet $4
Okay, there you
after
go.
the flop.
Yeah.
For what it's worth.
You've been granted.
I will say what I think, to kind of like double down on what Tortoise is saying. I think when you're solely betting $1 chips, people get more annoyed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a high volume of chips.
Like if you bet 6, he probably wouldn't have said anything.
Right.
See, I don't know that that's true, but okay.
I
Especially 4, because now you got to make the change like for every.
Yeah, but I mean, it's only here's my take on the whole thing. And granted, take it with a grain of salt because I played very little to no 1-3, 1-2. I think, especially in today's game, where people are very solver trained and they think in terms of percentage of the pot.
That's what I was. You're right.
Yeah.
Right. I'm guessing you're betting quarter pot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So they think in terms of percentage of the pot.
He's betting 300%.
Right. I'm on both of your sides. Like I'm on his side because I hate every fucking tournament player that exists that puts the extra $100 chip on any sort of bet that they make. They raised to 2.2 pre instead of min at the 1K blind level. They have to make it fucking 2,200 instead of 2K. Fuck you. Literally, fuck you, man. You see how many black chips are on the table. Fuck you. Like, make it 2K, or if you want to get spicy, make it 2,500. But this 22, It's live poker.
Right.
I assure you, it doesn't do anything to anyone's range.
Would like so like I saw that what was it? When you posted in the chat, I saw it and I was like, well, I think it won 3 just because it's not like if it's like 2-5, you should. I don't even know if you can, but you should definitely always increments of 5, like the big blind, right? So like, but like at at 1-3, I think there's a lot of $1 chips on the table, so I think it's okay to use them. But I was thinking like you were betting like $12 or something. Like when I heard 4, I'm like, nah, just make it 5 if you're gonna make 4. Like, would you ever make it 19? Or would you just make it 20? You'd never make it 19, would you?
Yeah, but
Probably not. I don't know, honestly.
it's a 10% difference versus 20.
I think
Or
it's
it's a 5% difference versus
Honestly,
20.
the thing that I had the biggest problem with was the approach at which I was spoken to.
Oh, yeah, of course that's not going to feel good.
If I'm working at a restaurant and I'm taking care of a group of teenagers,
Yes.
and every time I come to the table, like, hey, can I get some salt? Sure. I come back, hey, can I get a refill on my Coke? Yeah, sure. I come back, hey, can I get... It's like, I wouldn't scold the table and say, hey, guys, this will go a lot easier if all of you just tell me right now what all of you
But
want.
it wasn't the dealer telling you this, was it?
No. This was a player at the table.
a patron.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Like there could, and he knew who I was. I didn't know who this kid was.
Guapo doesn't know that
very
he's
easily,
famous yet.
He hasn't figured that
He
part
doesn't
out.
know
Maybe I'm
he's
really
gonna get
sensitive to the way that
recognized
people talk to me because
Well, yeah,
I
of
know I
course.
would never talk to anyone this way. But there could have been a much better approach.
Of course, I agree with
After
it.
the hand
Right.
is over, it's like, hey, so what's like with the different bet sizes? Oh, by the way, I watched the pod. Hey, listen, I think maybe this slows down the game, and if you think you have edge,
That's what a reasonable
and you can get
human
more
being would
hands
do,
in, like
Guapo.
maybe change your bet sizes to
Right.
like that way it doesn't-
You
like-
expect but
that's not what's-
everyone to be like as nice and
But that's
cordial
not.
as
That's
you.
also not what's happening here. That's not what's happening. This isn't about like speeding up the game or anything like
This
that.
guy trying to be like
This is about the like code of live games and what separates them from online games. And like the way that I see this is like at 1-3, where the small and the big blind are the same denomination chip. All chips are in play, and you can make whatever bet size you want. And also, nobody's at a skill level yet, except Guapo, who has no business playing these stakes. To actually be kind of policing the game in this regard. Like generally speaking, at 1-3, the dealer is going to run the game.
Yeah.
The dealer is the captain, right?
Right.
When you start to get to like 2-5, where people are playing for a living, now I think that like the best regs are going to emerge from the pool, and they're going to kind of conduct like not hard rules, but like social rules that have the best interest of the game in mind. And the big difference now at 2-5 compared to 1-3 is that you're dealing with two different denominations between small and big blind. In those games, I think it's really poor form to bet anything other than increments of the big blind.
Yeah.
Like betting $7, which people do this all the time.
At
and
2-5?
At 2-5. And they're just like,
I don't like that.
they're always the shittiest regs. And when I say the shittiest regs, I don't mean they're bad at poker. I mean, they're bad at understanding.
They're the ones that are going to seed hop and they're going to do all these different things.
Not only are they going to do that, but like they
yeah.
just cannot, like they just refuse to do anything that
Isn't down their
ejects
bottom
them
line.
out of their strategy.
Right.
Like, well, I hate to break it to you, boss, but I bet 35% pot, and that requires me betting $7 instead of betting 25% pot, which is $5, or 40% pot, which is $10.
Nerd.
And like, I'm just not going to bend on this, right?
Right.
And at 2-5, they have a reasonable gripe because, again, mostly recreational pool, hasn't really emerged yet as a lot of... Once you get to 5-10, specifically if you're using $10 chips, the person who bets in increments of 5 deserves to be banished forever. And like, this was a big thing back in the Venetian whenever 5-10 would run frequently. It was 5-10 uncapped. We used $10 chips.
Right.
Anybody who tried to sneak a $5 chip into a pot,
it opened at 25. It's like,
that ain't happening, buddy.
right.
You open to 20 or 30, or you get the fuck out of this game. And we would get backed by the floor. Like, the floor would come in. A lot of guys would bring $25 chips.
Yeah.
And we'd just be like, that chip doesn't play in this game.
Right.
Period. It just absolutely doesn't play in this game.
Right.
Because you don't want to create confusion. That's one of the biggest struggles at the highest stake games, that particularly for the dealers more so than anybody else, and why the high stakes games tend to lean private. I mean, this isn't exactly why they lean private, but it's a big aspect of being private and something that the players really have to oversee. I play with 6 different denominations on the table. I have $100 chips, $500 chips, $1K chips, $5K chips, $25K chips, and then $25 chips that don't count unless they're increments of 100.
Imagine you're playing 1-2 and someone opens a 550.
Right.
Like, just gone. You're gone.
Yeah.
You're out of here.
Yeah. Oh no, you would be ejected. But so there are 6 denominations of chips that have to be accounted for at all times whenever asking how much someone's playing, whenever somebody's all in and called. There's a lot of confusion here. So now, if you're playing something like 5-10, where there's and you're using a $10 chip, and now there's no functionality outside of incremental sizing to adding the $5 chip back in, and there's definitely no functionality to having a $25 chip, then you just make things go so much smoother if we say, hey guys, 5s don't play. Everything's going to be in increments of 10. And we're only going to play with $10 chips, $100 chips, and 1K chips. That's it. There's 3 denominations, and the third one doesn't even really get in there all that often.
Yeah.
Simple, smooth sailing. Everything goes well. Pots tend to be a little bit more bloated because you can't use these slightly smaller sizings. And look, I get it from a strategic standpoint, and the guys who come from online, none of this makes any goddamn sense. They think dollar chips should play at 5-10.
Yeah, of course.
And every stake
drill it down
thereafter.
to the percentage.
Right. So I want to bet
Right.
22.5%, and
Yeah.
I need $1 for that. Landed stimming.
Stop it. Don't lump me in with them. Stop it. Don't you dare. I played live poker.
Don't you dare.
Don't you dare do this.
dare
Don't
do
you dare
that.
make me like them.
Tell me you don't open the 2200 at 1K.
I wouldn't. I would open the 2500.
Ooh.
Why would you not?
Because
I have 2 more questions.
2.2x.
That's
Go ahead.
2.5x.
The first one is, am I significantly slowing down the game?
No.
no.
No, I don't think so.
No.
Okay.
I don't. Yeah.
I also don't think it's a big deal if the guy also has $1 chips in his stack too.
It sounds like this guy just wanted to be table captain and, you know, show
He
you
just
up
wanted
or
to
He's like
something
the guy
like
that doesn't let
right?
Matt go into traffic when Matt tries to get
Yeah.
his way in.
Oh,
He's
it
like,
happened yesterday.
Yeah.
Were you with me?
I don't know.
I don't think you were with me. I was doing the zipper method.
Yeah.
Legitimately, like, I'm not even saying I was skipping the line this time. Like, I was coming off of off a ramp.
Skipping
Right.
and zipping.
And, you know, we were trying to do the zipper method. And this big-ass truck just decides, like, fuck you, man, not on my watch.
Was it the white Ram?
Yeah.
I was there.
Yeah. Not on my watch, buddy. Not in Trump's America.
I was saying, I'm not saying that it had a Trump bumper sticker, but it probably
Not today, big guy.
That's right, man. They rule the road
That
now.
fucking foreign Maserati, the fuck out of here. You get behind me.
You mean the Mazda?
And it's like,
Mazda
Yeah,
Miata.
and I'm like just as stubborn, so I'm like, you know, gradually inching,
Yeah,
and
like,
nosing in
gonna
more
play
and
chicken,
more.
right?
He won.
Of course he did.
He won. He won that bet.
Because that truck would have destroyed your car.
Well, I
Shout
don't
out
care
to
about that. Let him
I
fucking
know.
destroy it. That's on him.
Well, you're in it.
It was more that, yeah, whatever. I mean, we're going 2 miles an hour. It was more that he managed to keep such a tight distance between him and the car in front of him
Yeah.
that there was actually never a point where I got my nose in.
Right, yeah.
I was like, wow.
It's
one
like,
last
don't we understand that
Etiquette question.
Go ahead.
I showed a bluff yesterday, and it was versus the only player at the table that I thought was playing really well. And my mentality was like, if you go to jail, you don't want to pick a fight with like the smallest guy. You
Right.
just want to like
Right.
go after like the gnarliest dude
course,
to kind of
yeah,
let
yeah,
people
yeah.
know what's up. Am I thinking about this wrong, or should I just never show bluffs?
No,
Okay,
I think it's
whip
part of
that
the game.
Whip
Yeah.
that shit over.
If you
Whip
think
that
if you
shit.
think you're going to get an advantage, especially over someone who you think is good in the game by doing that, then I think it's
You made
completely
somebody
fine.
feel bad by windmilling a bluff?
Well, no,
Yeah.
obviously I wouldn't do this to like a
You know
recreational
how many,
player.
you know how many
don't do
bluffs
it to the
Berkey's
old-
windmills in people's faces?
You don't do it to the old lady.
Right.
And you don't do it to...
to like the fun player at the table.
Yeah,
Right.
no. Sometimes you want to do it to
unless
them just like
if they like it, like if it's
like
a
fun
cool like
stuff.
banter back and forth. right,
That's
for
cool
sure.
at all. Like just you know,
Yeah.
you just pick and choose the right people.
Also,
Yeah.
final consensus is just keep betting whatever the hell I'm betting.
Don't bet $4.
Yeah, I
Bet
think
$5.
so, but I think if it's like if you're gonna bet 4 and you can bet 5, just bet 5.
I think he can do whatever he wants if he tips his dealer.
that's true
that's
too.
true.
Obviously, you have to tip the dealer. Anybody that doesn't tip the dealer in a cash game is just an asshole. I mean,
Absolute
I don't know.
asshole.
Right.
I don't really have a strong stance on this, but for some reason I do lean on Turtle's side. Like
I definitely
$4 is really annoying.
That
Yeah,
right.
I agree.
Because I've
Not
I've
turtle
actually done this where like I wasn't thinking. I was just like maybe was thinking percentage wise, or I just was just like in auto mode, and I bet like $9.
Yeah.
And I immediately apologized to the table, and I was like, "Can I just make it 10?" Like, and they're like, "No, it's 9 or whatever." Like,
I catch myself doing this
I was
sometimes.
like, "Sorry guys, I'll make it 10 next time."
So it's weird because I
Enemy
usually
of the table, tortoise.
I usually think the same thing about people who like bet 900 in 1-1, but I've stopped caring as much because it doesn't really slow anything down. It goes pretty quickly.
Right.
I do try to consciously be closer, but the difference is, I think the reason why $4 bothers me so much is because you're signaling that you're good, and I think that's the bad look.
That's true too.
Like, because reasonably, like, they're playing with $2 chips. He can just bet 2 chips.
Yeah,
that's not that unreasonable. Right. And if he had just bet $2, I don't think it's a big deal at all. Although
it has to be 3
or 3. Yeah.
Sorry, if he bets $3, right. I don't think. But then again, it is kind of that's also annoying. Like, I would just bet. If I would always round up if close to a whole number, or if you're in the middle, it's fine.
That's exactly what I
think
said.
$8 is fine.
Yes,
but I think
9
like
you just make it 10.
Yeah, 9 you make it 10.
4 you make it 5.
4 you make it 5.
Yeah, that's my stance.
It's quite funny.
3 you're never gonna bet.
It's kind of funny because like there's been pots where I've been like $300 in the middle. We're on the river playing 1-3, and I will bet $3. But just out of like laughing and just start dying laughing afterwards. And like just more of like whatever, tabled. I don't know. It's I'm not doing it for anything but to laugh.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so I'm not throwing off shit reg vibes if I'm like showing bluffs to.
No. I think that's.
I mean, show the fucking bluff. Who cares?
Show them part of the game.
Show them all. Like, who cares? Like, it doesn't matter.
Windmill them too.
Yeah,
right.
Make somebody feel like shit. Great.
This all might just be an image play for Guapo. He's not actually bluffing. You know?
No, I will say that
I show all 1.5 bluffs in every session.
I will say that like those low stakes, there's a lot of emotion wrapped around the bluffs. And I very much could see people taking it the wrong way.
Bluffing is evil.
But if you're gonna get in the streets, like, this is the part of the game that in live poker you have to navigate that you don't have to navigate online.
Right.
And the people that get good at understanding like where the lines are, those are the people who eventually get to say like, don't bet $4.
Right.
You know. But really the real thing, that the lifeline to pull you out of the muck here, is stop playing 1-3.
Yes, sir.
Got to get in the 2-5s. You're way too good to be playing 1-3. It's not, honestly. I would yell at you for betting $4 because I don't want you in my pool. Like, you're beating the rake. That's a problem. Get the fuck out of this game.
If you're beating the rake, you have to move up.
Yeah, that's a
rule.
You also just rolled for 2-5.
He's rolled for like 10-20.
I'm well aware. It's just about like
he's rolled for 100, 200. Let's just keep bumping his net worth up. To
also,
he's got $10 million.
Also, make sure to go watch that documentary. What's the name of that documentary, Connor?
No, I'm not saying. We're not talking about who it is.
Okay.
That's the whole point.
Oh man.
Moving on.
That was a really good question.
That's the true spirit of In the Muck.
It is. I
mean, there's hand histories. Yeah, you can really be in a tizzy.
Right.
Bet, don't bet. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The
but like $4 or $5, that's the real.
It's where we draw the line.
Yeah. That is what the muck started as. Is like things outside of the actual hand, and it just became hands.
Yeah.
we got paid to do it.
Yeah.
We even have this fancy intro for it.
We do. Right.
Time to cut to the intro.
It was a really nicely made intro.
Oh yeah. So speaking of In the Muck, while we're or actually I should say getting out of the muck.
Okay.
And we did mention the Steelers a little bit. One of our own, the ultimate Yinzer, if you will, has returned from Russia. He was captured. He returns after being captured for years by Russians.
Mm-hmm.
What was he
Comes
captured?
off the plane in a Steeler beanie. First thing he does is kiss the ground and drink in Iron City.
I mean,
Let's
this
go.
is my man right
This
here.
guy,
Yeah. Got an American flag shirt on.
hell yeah, brother.
Steeler beanie. Let's go.
What do you mean
yeah.
captured? Like, what happened to this guy?
Now that I don't know.
Yeah, we're not going to get.
We're really
details.
celebrating his black and gold roots.
He
here.
went to Russia. He probably maybe did something that they didn't like.
I think he probably got
detained him.
He probably
for a
got tied
long
up with the Brittany Garns.
he had cartridges of weed oil. in
Yeah, he
his
probably got
bag.
tied up with the Brittany Griner thing, and they weren't willing to sacrifice mass murderer.
It was
for
one
him.
merchant of death for one Brittany Griner,
Right.
not one merchant of death for Brittany Griner plus Yinz Guy.
Exactly. So Yinzer, man, he had to do his time.
Right.
Captain
But
Yinz.
he's back.
Right. Yeah. Now
I
here we
love
are.
that he's like, don't give me that icy light. I love icy light, but man, I've been
deserve
too long. Give me the full heavy beer, baby. Give me that Iron City.
I deserve an
What
iron.
the hell is Icy Light?
Iron City Light.
Oh.
Obviously. In the thread, somebody goes, he's going to be really disappointed to find out that the Steelers still haven't won a playoff game.
But they've made it.
Maybe
time.
now they can start winning playoff games now that he's here.
I think-
They were waiting for him to
You know what?
return.
I think you're
Their
right.
number one
Torres.
fan.
I actually do think you're right.
Yeah.
I doubt they let him watch Steeler playoffs in the cell.
He didn't miss much. They did him a favor.
The coin poker.
We call that cruel and unusual punishment.
The
Amendment
coin poker
8.
marketing team is taking a page out of the WPT Global Club Gold, Silver, Platinum pass marketing team, and they're going the meme route.
Oh,
And this is kind of a little bit of shots at WPT.
Yeah.
Little underhanded
Yeah.
shot here.
I mean, it's
Little-
good.
It's a
good,
quiet
though.
one,
Man,
but
is
it's a
that
shot across the bow. It's a good meme.
Can you
It's
go
a
ahead
very
and
good
read
meme.
it for the
I like
audio
men
audience.
who take risks. So it's a scene from a movie. I think that's Kate Hudson. I can't quite tell.
Jennifer.
Oh, Jennifer Lawrence. You're right.
Yes.
Jennifer Lawrence and the dude from.
Is it Silver
Gal-
Linings Playbook?
No.
No,
Damn,
because
I'm not
this
sure what
is the guy from
You're
Guardians of
getting
the
your white
Galaxy.
guys
Chris
confused.
Pratt.
Chris Pratt. Yeah. Yeah. What's his face? The guy from Philly was in Silver Linings Playbook. Come on, you two. Fucking up my background lighting. Bradley Cooper.
Yeah.
He was in
Yeah.
Silver Linings
Right.
Playbook. Anyway, she's saying, I like men who take risks. And he replies, I just took financial advice from Rampage.
And then she goes in for the kiss.
And now she's all over him.
Oh,
That
man.
is fucking
It's so
hilarious.
good. And by the way, if you're listening to like audio, like what are you doing? Like go to the YouTube and look at our beautiful faces, right?
Amen.
No, don't do
Yeah,
Zuzalo
yeah.
like that.
I mean, listen, Zuza's got to get on the YouTube channel.
He was
And
in the
then-
Red Rock streets yesterday. Hopefully he didn't get yelled at.
Oh no, he does everything correctly.
Yeah,
He's
Zeus
not-
is
He
a
is
live
right,
person.
Yeah. This man has been playing live for many years.
Out
He doesn't
there-
bet anything less
and-
than half pot.
And whatever is good, I'll tell you what. Yeah, that's true. He doesn't bet. Yeah, he only is big bet.
My
Big
man,
bet.
I've been
Zuz.
rocking
he's not
it.
even big bet. I promise you, his betting scheme is precisely half pot and just shy of pot.
I don't
He
know.
never knows what's actually in the pot, so he doesn't bet full pot.
Yeah.
but-
Well, he also opens the 40 every.
By the
time,
way,
so-
bro, he literally just said, Berkey, you're an idiot.
yeah,
Word for word.
I can hear him right now. Yep.
Sounds about right.
Jackass.
All
The
right.
arguments in the Survivor chat. I'm excited for those to come back.
Look, we don't need to expose the group chats. We have a lot of group chats
Too
going
many.
on.
I'm all muted.
Also, is it possible that Rampage is just playing into this and he's just memeing on all
I mean,
of
we
us?
kind of talked about this yesterday. If you're going to be in the gambling world and you're not seen as elite, it's pretty good to be seen as square. I think like the best thing you could be other than the best is the worst.
Amen.
Seems like a good racket to run, and he's doing a pretty fantastic fucking job of it at the moment. So there's that going on. When we get into the conversation of debating the best, there's a new name that we might have to throw into the arena.
He's always been there.
Oh, has he?
He's always been there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Texas Mike,
Fucking goat.
Mhm.
just throwing his weight around, wins the 5K, wire to wire. He went in with a massive chip lead yesterday. Roughly 80 big blinds.
Imagine what he'd be doing if he was 100%. Because I know he's been
That's right.
battling some
Well,
health stuff, right?
That's why he plays these 1 days instead of the 3-day main events, because he has that heart issue.
Never know
But-
when that might.
That's right. So he goes and wins this one for $185,000, his first ever PokerGO Cup win, and sure as shit turns right around today and is back at the final table, coming in just behind our man Laskowitz.
What an animal.
Who is chip leading today's 10K final table. It looks like Laskowitz is coming in as the chip leader with a little bit over 3 point something or other.
3.7.
3.7. Then you got Texas Mike coming in at 3.2. Amo there at 2.1. Seidel, 2 million. Chewy, 1.6. Weissman, 1.6, who also back-to-back. Is that correct?
Yes, Joey back to back.
And then Anthony Hugh coming in with a short stack of 400,000. Do we know what the blinds are going to be? Resident Go Master Landon?
You can check the website, and I'm doing that. Wow, that's crazy. I opened my phone. It's right there. It's 2550.
Bought that.
2550K.
Okay. And
You just had to close Magic.
That actually kind of makes exact sense because it was like half the players that were involved yesterday in the 5K.
The levels are longer too.
It's been a fun time in the studio where Patrick and I will take a fantasy draft. So every day for $100, he picks 5 people. I pick 5 people.
Mm-hmm.
He won day one. Day one, he had Joey and Cherish. Yesterday was my day. I picked Sam.
Good.
Picked Clement, who cashed. 4 of the people that I picked out of 5 cash.
Wow, strong.
Yeah.
You should have swapped with every one of them. What do you do?
You guys need to have like multipliers for stuff like that.
I told Clement, I said, I have a good feeling about you today. He says, all right. And then there he goes.
Did you get a swap in with Sam?
No, Sam won't do that.
He won't do that?
Yeah, his bottom line will decrease heavily if he does that.
I see.
Just beating me in 30-70s. All the cards weren't out yet, but don't worry about that part. Good post-flop player.
Yeah, so we're rooting for baby daddy Laskowitz getting that baby run good.
It's real.
It is real. It is real. You know, Melissa's been absent for roughly 9 months now. And
Roughly 9 months.
That's
9 and some change.
That should tell you
that's
something.
not an accident. She's gonna pop any day now, and it's gonna be a real sweat to see if Laskowitz abandons
Is she
stack.
overdue?
I mean, she's cooked.
It's got to be any day now.
Yeah.
The average
The bun is cooked.
Yeah, that's
Nobody-
not overcooked the bun.
the average birth time is how long?
I don't know.
It's not
Labor you're
36.
talking about?
I know it's not 36 week. No, not labor.
Oh,
40?
it's
38?
yeah, it's just shy of 10 months actually.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
supposed to be 40 weeks.
Because I
but
was born 36 weeks in. I was very small. I was a triplet.
how could you be small? You ate the 4th one.
Yeah.
I was 4 pounds.
They had to get him out of there before he ate the other 2.
I was 4 pounds.
I don't even
15
think for
ounces.
triplets that's that premature.
I think I was
No, I think, yeah, that's
32
like
weeks.
Right.
I was born at
32?
32. Yeah, because I was born 2 months premature.
That explains the lack of brain development.
You're an idiot.
I think
Do you imagine how big my brain would be if I was just fucking fully cooked? My God.
a lot more room for error. I think that like twins are often preemies. I know my cousins were twins. They were 2 months early. I think they came like 7.5 months, something like that. One of the guys I play cards with, he just had twins. They came very early too, very very small preemies. But yeah, I don't know. Do you think Laskowitz leaves the final table today? I mean, labor's not fast. You know, he could get through it.
I think he'll just finish out the table and then go.
Yeah, just
And then-
That's what
one
he
for the
would-
Gipper.
Yeah.
You know,
And then get back
Yeah.
to max late reds,
I
obviously.
mean, he's got to pay for a lot of diapers now, so it's like
true.
you gotta get that diaper money.
How's the
That
kid
is
going to
true.
go to
That's
private
actually-
school?
Yeah.
that you're making valid points.
I'm telling you, like,
You can't be sending kids to public school in Vegas.
no, absolutely
I
not.
told him, I said, if this is what the baby was for, you know, you're going to win a couple $1 million and then maybe you take some time off, you know, maybe.
Yeah, you should have been a lot nicer leading up to the baby run good. It's very important to be able to get this swap in.
Baby
now.
swap.
It doesn't matter how nice he is. He's never getting this swap in.
Well, that's I mean,
It's
not
'cause
now.
Not
Not now.
There was one time at the studio when I folded kings to some guy I've never seen before pre-flop, and that's when Sam knew that I was dead.
I gotta tell you,
I'm sure this guy had aces.
if I had heard that hint history, I might have just dropped you myself.
I'm sure. I'm very good.
I did see Kings get mucked pre-flop in Bobby's room 2 days ago in the most routine, quick manner. Like no funeral, nothing. Just table, face up, I fold to a fucking back raise. It was literally just squeeze, back 4-bet. Nope.
See, that's different. That's different.
No, you and I, we're not so different.
I
That
didn't
happens- no, I know, but that happens at the Jewel all the time.
Oh,
in the
yeah.
games I play,
Sure.
it's the same thing. It's like you come full circle.
Yeah. No, there was one particular
Look,
guy
man.
in the game that you would fold kings to, and
Right.
that guy happened to flat call and under the gun open, and then back raise.
I like that Landon's like, listen, man, I was very sure he had aces because obviously you folded kings. If you had any doubt, you would have not
Right.
folded.
When you're
What other
100,
argument could you
when
make?
you're 125 bigs and someone over the age of 70 puts in a 5th bet that's not all in, got to be careful.
What if he went all in?
You do have to be careful. I do.
I got kings in yesterday, level 1, and what happened? Freed at aces. What happened?
Against Fareed.
Fareed's earned it. Look, I got kings. Fareed, you got me.
If you can't
Take
get
the
kings
chips,
in
sir.
good pre-flop, you're in the wrong game. Maybe you should be playing those 3500s and not the studio.
Getting kings in there is a nightmare too.
I mean, when you put it that way, Landon, maybe it's just always a fold. You know, it's a
Yeah.
very risky endeavor,
Right.
to just take kings to
You
the
always got
face.
20%.
Well,
You're
or
lucky.
they always have 30. That's the real problem.
30, yeah, that 30% comes in all the time.
I can
The
imagine
worst
the
case.
stimming that Landon went through when he sees Fareed's aces. Are you kidding me?
It's like, good luck,
Are you
guys.
fucking kidding me?
Good luck, guys.
Guess this
Good game.
to me.
All
I'm gonna
right.
go play Magic for 4 hours and eat my Din Tai
Platt
Fung on
and
the
Hanks,
couch.
commentating these?
Yeah.
Okay.
They only get the best.
Yeah.
That's
why my score doesn't count.
Right. All right. Shifting off of poker a little bit, since we're going to be joined by Barber here shortly, I want to play a brief clip, if we can,
God.
to properly tilt everybody before we bring
Get
Barber
everybody
in.
steamed up.
I think you have the. Do you have the link? If not, I'll resend.
Are we talking about Schulman?
No. Here, I'll
Talking
just,
about that
I'll
podcast,
resend.
right?
Sorry, that's what I was trying to say.
Landon's favorite podcast.
Yes.
That's
Oh
right.
no, we're going there.
Yeah. Let's
Hold
just run it and then.
Did you just? Is this what you just sent to me?
Yeah, I
right
just
now?
sent it to you. Just run it, and then I'll give you a cue to stop. We'll
Last
probably
thing
run
on
it for
body
like
count,
3 minutes or so.
Okay,
You said there
good.
was no correlation to faithfulness and fidelity when it came to body count.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I did want to challenge you a little bit on this. There's a bunch of, at least from what I've seen, there's a bunch of studies that seem to indicate that there is a correlation.
The sample size with those is really off, and then I don't know what a delta was. I was giving it to someone who's much smarter than me that can actually read stats, and I sent it to him, and I was like, can you like tell me, because this goes against the argument or the conversation that we were having the other day, and he said there's a really high delta, and I don't know what that means in that.
Like a span, like a standard deviation. Well, not
Yeah, like
standard,
there was
but
an issue with the delta in those research papers.
or like
so
the gap.
I don't know. I'm not a statistician or a researcher or a journalist, as we established earlier in the podcast. So
Any update, by the way?
Wait a
Oh,
second.
yeah.
Hang on here. I'm sorry.
Wait.
I can't let this go. How can you take issue with the stats if you don't know what your issue with the stats is?
no, I'm saying first the sample size was my issue. Is that it was like a really small
What's
sample
wrong with
size.
the sample size?
Well, if it's super small, then you can't apply it to the masses, right?
Well, it depends on what we're trying to study and
Anything. If
what
you
the
take-
controls are for the sample size.
If you take 20 people, you can't say, well, these 20 people did this one thing, so then that's indicative of anyone that commits that behavior.
Depends on what we're trying to study.
I just don't think 20 is accurate.
You could take 20 as a sample size and have it be representative of something. But in this case, are you saying that the sample size, hang on, in this case, are you saying the sample size was 20?
No, I don't know. I remember it being small. I think it might have
Yeah,
been.
but what does that mean though? So this is the problem, right? When you get into the details, like the gal
This
who's
is so
next to you,
boring
she's
to
actually
me.
going to literally agree with everything I just said. She has no choice.
No,
This
sure.
hang on. This is stats. This is how they work, right?
No,
you
of
can't
course.
have sample size which are small, but they do have some kind of statistical relevance or significance. In this case, you just saying, well, the sample size from my view was small doesn't actually mean anything.
It means something. It doesn't mean
You
nothing.
could, well, maybe, but maybe not.
It indicates the level of confidence we can draw from the.
Yeah, but
the
what is,
thing.
okay, well then what is small? Tell me what small is
We have
as
to
a
pull up
number.
the study.
Well, you can do a calculation on the level of confidence.
Yeah,
So it
tell
depends
me
on
what small is. She says it's small, but won't
I
give you
would
the
say
number.
for me, anything under 1,000, I would consider a small sample size. Like if I were to pull one person at this table and say,
And are you saying that
Wait,
these
hold on.
studies have less than 1,000?
Let her finish. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to know that.
well, no,
Or-
because I mean the rules aren't being applied evenly, so it's like I can't interject at all, but then I keep getting interrupted,
You can
and that's
definitely
not.
interject.
No, because you're like, no, let me finish, but then it's different rules for me, and then that's not
Well,
fair.
I did just.
I know, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, because
No,
it's lightning, the reason that I interject very quickly is just for quick clarification.
but when I do it, it's not allowed for quick clarification.
It is allowed. I'm
And
happy
that is
for
one
it.
of my critiques about the show, right? It's just like I'm all for debate and like having ideas proven wrong, but there's a way to do it that's like out of curiosity and in good faith and doing it in respect. And then there's like a way that you can do it with tone and intent that is like it's bad
Okay,
faith.
well, there's literally 8 people on the panel. I've spoken very little. I'm having a lightning round with you. I'm getting clarifications quickly.
You popped in. I didn't even know this was a debate. I thought we were just like going over topics, and then like you popped in, and then
we are going over topics.
Yes. If you're saying that there's not a too small for a sample size, do you think that I can go ask one person a question?
Didn't say that.
Okay, so what would not be like? What would be an appropriate size for you then? So like
It's
when
going to depend on what it is that we're studying, why, and what the control factors are. So this is my whole problem.
Oh, I'm saying controls, but like I'm not sure that you understand how controls work.
Controls are super important for any study. Yes.
Like controls are important for certain types of things that you're studying. You can't just throw out. No, you.
No, for all
this
types
is
of
like.
things. There's no science is not possible.
I understand how to run studies. You don't need controls for all things that you study.
Your studies are all bullshit.
You haven't read my studies, dude. Listen, no, you.
Yes, I have dove into your studies, which is how I knew that teenagers were oversampled in all of them. And they're all bullshit. That aside,
no.
That aside, can you tell me how you can have science absent controls, madame?
You can absolutely have science absent controls. Like for example, science is testing a hypothesis, right?
Yes.
And like let's say I have a hypothesis here that like maybe the people who looked worse when they were made into old people actually have higher body counts. How would you propose we have a control for this hypothesis?
Wait a second. Let's back up. Your hypothesis is what?
That the people who looked worse when they were aged up have higher body counts. This is my hypothesis, hypothetically.
Yeah, great. So you're going to test this hypothesis.
Yeah, so what would you suggest be the control?
Wait. Are we testing the hypothesis? Because that's the next part of the scientific method, right?
Yeah, we could test it by...
So how can you have a test absent a control?
I'm proposing the hypothesis. I'd like to know how you would propose that we control for this.
It doesn't matter how I would do it. I'm asking how could it even be done absent a control?
The way that I would test this hypothesis is I would ask people to, like, for example, I would figure out how bad we look in the things, maybe assign a rating so we can have a number.
Control.
No, that's not a control.
Yeah,
okay, do we just have like very different meanings of the word? What do you mean when you say control?
No, we don't have very different meanings of the word control.
Assigning a number to a way a face looks is not a control.
In science, what do you think a control is?
A control is, let's say I give a medication to a group of people because I want to see if it has an effect. I also measure the group of people that have not received that medication as a control to see if there's a difference between the populations.
So in sociology, you're saying there's no controls?
I'm saying there can be controls. I'm saying I'm giving you. Listen to me talk for a second.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that there are some types of hypotheses for which testing does not require controls. And I'm giving you a very narrow example. For example, I'm checking to see if there's a correlation in this group between the apparent age of being aged up and a body count. And I would do this by looking at the number assigned to the age, and I would look at the body count, and I would run a correlation.
What you've done is you've created a control ruling other things out.
That's not what a control is. A control is taking another group and then
Wow.
I've seen people dig in on gotchas before, obviously. I mean, we see it on Twitter every day. Like that back and forth is, I think, what drives the worst part of me onto Twitter to just like try to police this entire airspace for no good goddamn reason.
Not on bot Twitter, you don't.
It's just like, what are you hoping to accomplish? Because this poor girl is talking till she's blue in the face, and she's obviously clearly right, and he's just blatantly wrong. But there's no demonstrating at this point because he's too dug in.
Right.
And if she's able to like clear, and that goes on for like another 20 minutes, and it
goes on longer than that.
It just becomes like abundantly clear over and over and over again. He clearly has no idea what the phrase control means when you're talking about anything mathematically related or scientific. Like this distills down to something very simple. Like you're just talking about variables, right? And a control would just be a constant. So you're just trying to create some sort of baseline, right? That's how we would refer to it in poker. Is like you have your baseline strategy and then you have your exploits. Your baseline would be your control in this instance, right? Saying that something is absent of other variables that could potentially exist. Like he goes way off into deep end and goes, well, are we going to ask them what color their dog's fur is? And she's like, no. And he's like, then you're controlling for that. It's like, well, that's clearly not the way that this works. We don't just say that like every single variable that doesn't exist is now being controlled for. Right. That's crazy.
You can't control everything.
Somebody who's a lot more sophisticated when it comes to this stuff and probably more tilted about this since he was the one who originally tweeted it. Andrew Barber, welcome.
What's up?
Well, he's
What's
looking at me. He has a
poppin',
suit
Bob?
today.
Man, it's Nazi.
He's coming out of a meeting.
I'm in the workplace.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Wardrobe Thursday.
Let's talk a little bit about this because first of all, like I think that podcast, the whatever podcast or whatever it's called is
That's whatever it's called. That is
Deplorable?
it's just hot garbage. I mean, it's obvious hot garbage, but
Is it just basically guys just going in to dunk on girls? Like, is that the whole
yeah,
premise?
it's literally just like 2 or 3. I think there's a black guy who also hosts it, and they just get a panel of OnlyFans girls almost always. And it's
they're
like
just always dunking?
It's literally like midwits versus nitwits. I mean, truly, it's like 105 IQ getting the opportunity to just like slam on people who have like 85 IQ. It's so embarrassing to watch, and they have obviously a massive following. And there's nothing that should make you more afraid for the future of the universe than watching that clip that we just showed and then reading the live chat. The amount of people in the audience that have no idea that she is blatantly right and the smarter of the two of them is mind-numbing to me. But anyway, for a more sophisticated take, Barber, why don't you tell me what led to you tweeting this?
I think that it was a moment where did you already cover the thing where she asked him, you have a bunch of observations of people where you have like their height and weight.
We didn't get to the height and weight. It was too much. We ran like 5 minutes of it.
So I mean, I applaud you for like going back in time and watching as much as you did. Like props to you. I could not do that. When I saw the length of the podcast, like everyone else, I was like, I can't imagine this went on for 7 hours. But she asked him a simple question, and this was like I think that where the tides turned a little bit. I mean, probably not with the people in the comments or whatever, but I think that the illuminating moment was when she asked him, if you suppose you have a bunch of observations of people where you have their height and their weight, how would you find the relationship between these two? And he was dumbfounded. And I was like, okay, this is like the Emperor's New Clothes moment where like we realize that he has no idea what he's talking about. And I think up until that point, like he was doing an okay job. I mean, obviously, you kind of tear him apart, but I think he, like many people on the internet, are able to like signal intelligence without actually possessing it. And I think you can fake this stuff, especially in argumentation, if you're really good at it, where you just like poke holes in the other person, but you don't actually contribute anything of substance yourself. And so if he doesn't know how to find a simple relationship between two variables, which is like trivially easy, like he doesn't have like the credentials or the credibility to even speak on this topic. And I don't think we have really good filters for filtering for people who know what the fuck they're talking about.
Yeah, I think obviously what caught your attention was just the inability to do basic math here. And that was somewhat important to me. I guess like it made me watch. But
I agree it's secondary. It's what pulled me in.
Yeah. What hooked me and what infuriated me, and I think what I'm realizing is the thing that has always driven me absolutely batshit crazy. Like if I have a specific cause in life in some sort of capacity, it's to make people aware of logical fallacies. And watching people debate in bad faith is maybe my number one pet peeve of what the internet has done to all of us. It already existed prior to the internet, but it's amplified by 1,000,000% on the internet, and now really dumb people are being, kind of hailed as being intelligent, and it's very frustrating because you're right. He was very good at. Good's not even the right word. He was very, was very consistent. Yes, he was very dug in to these tactics, and for anybody with half a brain, they're as transparent as see-through window, like. As opposed to a non-see-through window, but it's just he kept like.
It could be dirty. It could be a dirty window.
Right. It could be
There's mud on it.
Tell him it's a tinted window.
Yeah.
Wow.
We have shades down. Okay. Look, it was a necessary qualifier. But no, like he kept trying to railroad her by utilizing what I would say would be jargon to the average listener when you continually repeat the word controls. To the average listener who's probably not very math savvy or doesn't do any scientific work, never ran an experiment or anything like that, it doesn't mean anything. But honestly, even in like common culture, everybody's watched a medical show at some point in time. Everybody's seen a drug trial play out on the show House, and they know that like it's a blind study, so it's a flip whether or not you actually get the meds or you're part of the control group. They know what a sugar pill is. You know what I mean? The easiest way to define a control is always going to be that medical example.
It's funny because like I was thinking, I was like, I should show this to Michelle because she would absolutely lose her mind. Of course, she's been in the medical field for a couple decades, and she's been part of medical studies with controls and all this stuff. So she would understand very, very quickly that what this guy is
right. And so his tactic is clearly just to continually railroad her time and time again, and basically ask questions that are done in such bad faith that her answering them would be a bigger mistake than her just ignoring or moving on and letting him keep repeating it till he's blue in the face. But she is acting in good faith, so she does try to give honest answers every time. Like, how can you run an experiment absent controls? Well, now she makes the mistake of moving the goalpost, because at no point in time were they talking about correlation to begin with. The whole conversation was spurned off of this study was done with a sample of X, and the other girl saying like, I believe X was too small to be representative of the population. And then that turned into, how can you run an experiment without control? Because he asked, how do you define small? And then it snowballed into, well, how can you ever run a scientific experiment without a control? And she goes, here's an example. We can find the correlation between height and weight in a certain group. And then he goes, those are controls. And now they're only debating about what the definition of control is. And as he beats her over the head with his incorrect definition of it, he's now able to say, you're disqualified to do science because you don't know the definition of a control.
Right. And he got so frustrated at one point, we didn't show it. I think he called her like a fucking idiot or something like that.
He called her a fucking dummy.
Right. Yeah. And it's just like, at that point, he's just like backed into a corner, and that's his only way out, is to lash out and call her names.
Of course. And I think like from the standpoint of why fall for these clear traps if you're acting in good faith and they're acting in bad faith, the reason is because the center of the subject material was statistics. Always, it was always based on a study, and they were talking about a population where n equals something, right? And there was no clear definition of what n equals, and now they're debating what small, large versus representative is, and all this other stuff. So he is the one who moved the original goalpost into experimentation and, using control groups and all this other stuff that's completely unnecessary to the conversation at hand. And it's very easy to fall down. This is Twitter in a nutshell, specifically poker Twitter and political Twitter, which overlap way more than any of us would like to see. I know I did a lot of the talking here, but I think like if my memory serves, the last time we spoke, I had meant to bring this up, and I think I kind of let it pass, but something Daniel tweeted that I can't remember what it was off the top of my head now, where you replied, and I text you, and I said, wow, you're trying to change the mind of Daniel and somebody else all in the same day. You're really doing the Lord's work.
Was it Max Pescatore?
Oh, yeah, it was Daniel and Max. Yeah. And I think it was something political, but I can't recall off the top of my head what it was.
I mean, it was probably Daniel's like extremely off-color joke about Gaza, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I forgot about that. The one that had, then been deleted thereafter. I guess somebody got in his ear, or I don't think he ever thinks better of things. He
replied to someone and said, like, someone I respect told me they thought it was out of line, and I was like, God, I hope it was me. But that was so like beyond the pale. Like it wasn't even fucking close. I mean, I'm like fired up about it because
you don't need Daniel's approval either to be, qualified.
Legitimately, something I'd like to think that something that we all have in common is like we want the respect of our peers. We want credibility, and so when something important comes up, people look to you. Like for years now, Galfan's been like the oracle, and if you ever need an arbitration, this is the guy you call on because he's going to be fair. He's going to approach things in good faith, and there's like a serious shortage of people who do that these days. And I I don't seek the approval of others, but like I think that I would like to have a reputation as someone who is who approaches things in like a fair manner, as like is an honest broker, is willing to acknowledge like, you know, when I don't understand something or when I was wrong about something. And it's just something that we haven't figured out how to incentivize or select for yet, because unfortunately it's the people that like operate in bad faith that get promoted. And there's what's that Brandolini's law, that it takes an order of magnitude more effort to refute bullshit than to generate it. And that is just so true. And you can imagine how many times like we are left spinning our wheels because we're refuting bullshit, and the people that are peddling it are just like kicked back and relaxed and like, well, I don't have to do anything more. I've managed to spout off 10 lies, and it's going to take people multiple days to respond to this stuff. And I think that highlights why it's so important to interact with honest brokers, with people operating in good faith, because you're not going to waste so much of your life trying to refute bullshit.
Yeah, I also think, and you know, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that there's an aspect to when you put acting in good faith and logic and reason and all of these things on such a pedestal, or you know, they're virtues that you abide by and would like to see the world adhere to a lot more. I think that there's a certain aspect of wanting to impact change or impart change at scale. And so if you were the source that made Daniel think twice about something like this, now you were able to have an effect on somebody with a massive audience. So like, I think that aspect of it means a lot more than if, you know, Conrad put out a bad tweet and you text him and said, hey man, I think that's a pretty bad look. And he's like, you know what, you're right, and just takes it down.
Well, thankfully I don't have to do that, because all he does is spins gold. I mean, like his halftime show was Chef's Kiss. No,
appreciate you, Bob.
But you're absolutely right. Like I do want to. I mean, like at the risk of seeming, you know, sappy, like I want to make the world a better place in whatever ways and you know, shapes that takes form. You know, I've tried to do a lot through philanthropy, but I think that I do find like this social media space that we operate in as an interesting petri dish to try to test theories and like how, you know, what are some convincing arguments for people who aren't typically convinced, or how can I get someone who's, you know, I think being unfair towards me to recognize that. Like, are there some heuristics I can use? Are there some strategies? And, you know, I think that I used to be so much more of a dick on the internet, and used to have so much more of an ego, and I never got anywhere with it. And I'm certainly still guilty of these things. Like I'm so far from you know, getting to whatever perfect is here, but I think that I've made strides and I've seen the results of that. Like I think that you assume charitability, like or to try to be charitable towards other people and assume that people typically mean well, I think is like a really good heuristic, and then let them show you that that's incorrect. Like, and I've certainly interacted with enough people to know after a few interactions, oh wow, like this is a person who has zero intent of hearing what I'm saying, trying to understand me, reflecting on that, you know, updating their opinions. But there are these like moments in which I see that people actually have, and they occur with me too. I mean, you know, where there is a changing of the mind on something that's like really important.
What do you think though, with regard to the influencer space? We talked a lot about this yesterday, and I think this is a good way to transition into it. What do you think about this influencer space, similar to that Alex Wilson? I think that was his name.
Andrew
Wilson. Sorry.
Andrew.
Yeah, that was you know, just blatantly acting in bad faith and reaping all of the rewards of it. He's not the only one, right? Like, I mean, there's a lot of this whole, you know, Andrew Tate-ish lane. There's this red-pilled culture where, you know, blatantly acting in bad faith kind of garners you not just an audience, but a pretty high point of leverage where you can both convert that into real dollars as well as like social currency that allows your voice to expand and continually reach further corners of the internet and society as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's just bad incentives. I mean, I think this is like how like Ben Shapiro got his start. Like Ben Shapiro is like a masterful debater. I think people that just debate well, people who are really good with rhetoric, are just going to like more often than not win because they're really hard to defeat. And I think like Ayla is a good example of someone who understood where things were going off the rails. And that's why it was so cringy, because I think she kind of had good responses to a lot of what Andrew was saying.
Mm-hmm.
And that things kind of devolve if someone is like, it's like this is a good analogy, but it's like seeing a magician and knowing how they do every trick and saying it out loud as they're doing it. Like that's going to be a very rough performance. But to someone who doesn't realize that magic is not real and that it is, sleight of hand, that looks amazing. And you think that the person has these supernatural abilities. But as soon as you know the tricks, things kind of fall apart. And I think that is kind of Andrew's shtick. I think that's a lot of the personalities on the right. It's not a monopoly on the right. There people do this on both sides, and it's certainly appealing to a segment of the audience. I'm not going to rush to the IQ judgment that you did, but there might be some truth to that, and it's tempting. And I don't know how you refute it, because there has to be a level of education. Like you have to be somewhat educated to understand why Andrew didn't know what he was talking about.
Yeah, the IQ judgment isn't really a fair one, because I think that if you're looking at the bell curve distribution, so to speak, of people who couldn't recognize that he was just blatantly wrong, it's mostly going to be people who aren't educated in a mathematical way. But you're going to have outliers that also jump into the pitchforking and supporting of his side simply due to wanting to push a narrative, right? So they may know better, but they'll find ways to try to twist his narrative. And maybe this isn't a great one because it's pretty black and white. Like, I don't think there's a lot of room for debate here, but Ben Shapiro is a great example, I think. And I know that we're picking a lot of guys who fall into the right, but there are a lot of people on the left that are really, really, really bad faith debaters as well. I think the difference is the subject material. Quite often, the right, I think, get overly punished for being bad faith because it tends to come from a misogynistic tone. It tends to come from an economic disparity tone, like a wealth gap, if you will. Like a lot of the stuff that you see that goes viral is going to be Ben Shapiro,
rich white guy.
Yeah, it's going to be like Ben Shapiro undressing a college student on trans rights, or there's this other guy, I can't remember his name, but like his whole thing is just going to colleges and debating college kids on why there's only two sexes and pronouns need to stay he, she, and all this other stuff. And mostly he embarrasses these kids for the most part. One, because that's the content that gets curated, because it's his team putting it out. And two, they're going into these debates very prepped. Debate is something that, like, if you're very educated in it, it's much like poker. Not only do you know the lanes through which a good faith debate takes place, and you can actually, if you find a proper sparring partner, you can arrive at a middle ground and start to come to some conclusions. But more importantly, this guy. How did you find him so quickly? That's incredible. More importantly, there's all the exploits, right? There's all the bad faith debate that is available to you. There are all the logical fallacies that you can just present to somebody who can't identify them in real time. Somebody who can't and won't truly, if they want to actually have reasonable discourse, won't just sit there and respond to you like that's an appeal to authority. Yeah, that's a straw man. You're moving the goalposts. Like just one after another, saying like, I'm not going to respond until you give me a good faith point to respond to. Nobody has that kind of energy or time. But the irony is, like, that would be less effort than just shouting your point back at them in what you feel to be a good faith way. And honestly, like, rage baiting is so fucking popular right now. It is like the number one way to curate an audience and keep them engaged. Just hand out pitchforks at the door.
I got to pick on Daniel here because Daniel just seems so easily baited these days.
Yeah.
And like his latest was like something about stupid straws.
Oh yeah.
And I was actually listening. I was listening to the radio this morning, and I guess I never realized that it's probably quite intentional on the part of people within the current administration to feed that outrage machine, because I'm not sure if things are going to function without that. Like if you don't give people, meat to chew on, I'm curious where that energy would go. And like if we're not constantly yelling about paper versus plastic straws,
right,
or trans issues, or the Department of Government Efficiency that's worried about a scientific grant that went to, some obscure study of shrimp, then we'll actually have to start thinking about or talking about things of substance. Like do we need to cut defense funding? Because there's no conversation about that. And
right.
that's where the money goes. The money goes to entitlements. It goes to defense. It doesn't go to the trivially small foreign aid programs. But that's not I don't think that's a winning debate, and I think that actually kind of mirrors what you're talking about with the bad faith actors, which is you're setting the table for what you want to talk about, because if you don't control the conversation, it's going to go to a place that you're not going to be assured victory.
Yeah, I mean, like using Daniel as an example, I feel like he is just now coming around to this notion of rage bait, and he's understanding how powerful it is in growing your brand. And I think this is something that Polk knew from day one, and he built an entire platform off of it. Mm-hmm. Like when you just are polled, and I just ask you point blank, like, name me some good faith influencers that are out there doing the legwork, presenting you with factual to the best of their ability, and doing so in a way where they're open to criticism. Outside of the health and wellness space,
say Huberman.
Even Huberman is like one notch below. Yeah. It's more like the Rhonda Patricks.
Yeah, Rhonda Patrick's a really good.
And not to dismiss Huberman, he is a scientist, but it's like the people who are on the front lines of science, mm-hmm. where they don't stand to benefit that much. Yeah. Huberman has now made it his job to be an influencer.
Yeah.
Where Rhonda Patrick is still more of a she's more doing research.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She's certainly not trying to push herself as much as she could, or maybe she doesn't want. I got a name for you. What about Liv Burry?
Yeah,
perfect example of somebody who I think is probably doing all of that, but I think that she's in the early phase, and I still think she's influenced by a lot of bad faith actors. And I'm not saying that in a way of condemning her points. I'm just saying that in the sense that all of us are biased and manipulated by the people that we surround ourselves with. Like, if you told me tomorrow, I was shocked to see how much stuff Huberman got wrong. That was eye-opening and unfortunate, because he was the kind of guy that I thought was a pretty reliable source. And so when that happens, of course, I'm open to like reframing and taking what he says now with a grain of salt. But imagine if he were a bigger influence on me, right? Like, Liv's very close to Elon, and that's not to say that Elon is all bad, but it's not to say that he's like a great faith actor in the space either. He does a lot of manipulative shit in bad faith, mm-hmm. in order to get his point across. Now, I've seen no examples of her doing the same. I guess my point is that like her influence is very, 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 very small right now, and we don't know that the growth will come without the exchange of being a rage baiter.
Oh, I think that she's like probably limited her upside just because it's very niche. I mean, like she's kind of a nerd, and I think that the stuff that she is trying to promote, I mean, like she's got the Win-Win podcast. I mean, she has great guests. Yep, I think she asks great questions, but it is not. I mean, the stuff that's appealing is just so simple, and that's the problem here. Is that
I think Liv is like really in a position to be massive, though. Like all those qualities that you just named, I think are reflective of some of the biggest names out there. The Lex Friedmans.
I was going to say Lex
world.
Friedman. It was one that came to mind for me.
Even Tim Ferriss, who's probably the GOAT when it comes to the podcasting realm and the influencer realm, who I would say is like pretty much mostly good faith.
Tim Urban is.
Yeah.
Tim Urban's a good friend of hers too.
Right. Yeah.
Also, I would say like he's pretty much good faith.
You're hitting some great names. I mean, you've assembled a list. Like, if you could restrict yourself to the health and wellness and fitness people, and Liv and Tim Urban and Tim Ferriss, and then maybe you could sprinkle a couple of maybe like some of the best journalists in the game. I think you've got your information diet, and you could just discard the rest. But the problem is the rest is like it's junk food, it's crack, and I think it's too tempting.
Well, it also becomes a thing too. And I don't know how you feel about this, but like personally, I've always felt compelled to try to listen to the other side rather than like kind of falling down a silo. And like a guy like Lex Friedman's a good example of this. I think he's almost like too open to a fault, right? Like, and I think Rogan fell down this path. Originally, I don't think he was this way, but somewhere down the line, he opened the floodgates to where he no longer restricted, at least not with much diligence, who he would have a conversation with. And I think the turning moment was when he had the Proud Boys on. And he kind of like, had them on in a good faith way of basically being like, oh, these guys are just regular people too, and they have a story to tell. When it's like, well, they're actually like just clearly representative of a hate group.
Right.
And it's like somewhere along the line, somewhere we have to like draw the line. Yeah. And, it's easy for him as the host to say like, look, man, I don't want to discriminate. The left is portraying them as a hate group, but other people might see them as just being radicals who have a lot of very good points, and I think that they deserve a platform to get it out. It's like, okay, maybe you could have like one example of that, but then it starts to snowball, right? Like then we start to see, a lot more guests that start to fit a certain lane, and regardless of their politics, it becomes like a more radical lane. As it branches out further and further. And it's like now, as a source, you have to become a little bit more disqualified. And I kind of feel like Lex is headed down that path. His intellectual curiosity, I feel like, almost allows him to have a conversation with anybody. Mm-hmm. But when you start platforming certain people, it's like, I don't really necessarily want to hear this any longer. And I found myself listening to a lot of Ben Shapiro because I recognize he's intelligent, and I recognize that side of the line really reveres this guy, and I just grew so fucking irritated.
He's pretty smarmy.
It's not even about being smarmy. It's about
it's a little bit though.
No, I don't.
No, I mean,
know.
Yes, it's what he's actually saying. I know.
I care more that like it's all partial truths.
Right.
Like he hides behind the phrase of facts don't have feelings, but also like. What he's really trying to say is my facts don't have feelings.
Right.
And it's so frustrating as, I'm probably not anywhere close to his intellectual equal, but I can listen with a trained mind, or a trained ear rather, and pick up on certain cues that go one way or the other. And it's just like, God damn it, man. Like, could you just not?
Yeah.
And then I started, once that happened, then the snowball effect happened where I went back and listened to people that I really enjoyed. And I started to hear a lot of bullshit there too. It's like now all of a sudden it's like a guy like Simon Sinek, who I think is brilliant, is just a fucking marketing guru guy, and like he's not really promoting. It's more innocent. He's not rage baiting anybody. It's quite the opposite. A guy like E.T. the hip hop preacher, it's like this guy's message is very innocent. It's very uplifting. But it's all fucking bullshit.
Well, I think you studied like logical fallacies, and you've become very versed in them. So I think like the fact that you've took the time to do that is now you can recognize it much easier, and that helps you recognize.
I think it just hurts. I think it just hurts. I do because it's like these guys are still going to get their message out to masses, and everybody's going to pick a team, and they're going to pick a place to decide to go into or not. And once that occurs, there's no bringing them back. There's no influencing the other way. So we were talking a lot yesterday about like, just overall influencers, and it sparked your and I's conversation about like this is water and how impactful we both have found that speech to be. I think one of the biggest reasons why I find that speech to be so compelling is because it's such it just cuts straight to the facts. It's such no nonsense, and just so quickly identifies how much flowery language is used in everyday life, how much manipulative tactics are being generated time and time again, where he's just like, look, here's the nuts and bolts of it all. The capital T truth of it all is like, you're going to go through life in a very drawn out kind of way. You're going to do repetitive shit. You're going to interact with the same people time and time again. You're going to deal with traffic. You're going to deal with these frustrations. You're going to deal with all this. And the only thing that you have control over is the framing of it all. And like, to me, that's like really powerful. You're empowering people to kind of like dictate their own mood.
Yeah. And I think the thing I would highlight from it, there's so much. And I don't know if you haven't linked it recently, you should link it. But he talks about the default mode, that we're all stuck in this default mode. And the title, This is Water, refers to, there's an old fish that's swimming, by two younger fish. And the old fish says to the younger fish, hey boys, how's the water? And they keep swimming by. And then, a minute later, one young fish says to the other young fish, what the hell is water? And I think it's meant to capture that, like, there is this whole reality that we exist in that we're not aware of. And then he highlights these examples of we're all in our own heads and we don't think about the lives and the experiences of other people. And I think that the large takeaway from this is that if you can get outside yourself and see the world from like a bird's eye view, that there's a chance for you to have realizations, epiphanies that you could not have when you were in your own head. And so maybe the realization in the context of what we're talking about here is, what is the media that you're consuming? And like, how much is it empowering you? How much of it is actually informing you? Are you like, do you have an accurate model of reality because of the things you're consuming? Like, I'm always trying to get people to bet on shit because I am convinced that the majority of people out there have no idea what they're talking about, have so many false beliefs. And if they were only given the opportunity to test them, they would realize either how full of shit they are, or how misinformed they are, or how ignorant they are. But I think without that, without being tested on this stuff, without being presented with an opportunity to see things differently, then there's no impetus to get us to think differently. And so I think that, we talked about This is Water, and I forget what was the other, some inflection point, but like, I think opportunities to have your kind of worldview shaken up are really, really good and important to expose yourself to. I think it's probably why I'm drawn to just graduation speeches. Like, This is Water was part of many that I kind of collected over the years. But I think that any opportunity, this is theoretically like why reading is really useful, and why traveling is really useful, is it exposes you to different settings in which you can have new ideas, new revelations, that without which you're fucked and you're stuck in the default mode.
Yeah, I agree. I actually think it's more rare than not to have your entire worldview shaken. And I think that's kind of why so much of the travesty that's happening like around the world goes largely unnoticed. It's very hard to make Americans care about Gaza. It just is. And it's why Daniel thinks he can make that joke. And a large subset of his audience who has chosen a team for a fight that they're not a part of will laugh at it, right? And then whenever you drill down more locally and you start to look at more divisive topics like racism, sexism, misogyny, transgender issues and things of that nature, it's the same shit. And the issue is that both sides are equally as guilty. We kind of threw a lot of shade on the debaters from the right, but like the exact same thing happened, especially during COVID times, from a lot of the influencers on the left. They were spreading a lot of misinformation about COVID itself. They were spreading a lot of misinformation, or they were at least speaking in a lot of hyperbole and loaded logical fallacies when it came to trying to hit the extremes of these social imbalances, whether it's women's rights, trans rights, gays' rights, whatever the case may be. Woke culture in and of itself developed this pendulum effect that swung way too far to the corrective side. And, that probably led us to now, where everything in life kind of falls under a bell curve distribution. And that includes societies and political views and social views and everything else. And it's like when you see these extreme radical shifts, whether it's to the left or to the right or, some other narrative that we're unaware of, eventually the general populace just wants things to settle in the middle, right? And oftentimes that'll come at the cost of a corrective force from the other side. So I think that's why you saw a lot of people who were liberal 5 years ago suddenly shift to being towards a more conservative slant. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when people were calling D-Negs a cuck.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago.
It was not that long ago.
It was not that long ago that he was a woke cuck who, needed to shut the fuck up about all these other things that he was. And that really is a perfect example of.
I mean, Joe Rogan went through the same thing, right? I mean, he was a Bernie Sanders guy, and now he's a Trump guy. Like, how do you go from Bernie? They call it like the horseshoe, right? Like, where you're this close, but you go like that.
Right, yeah.
I thought it was COVID driven. Like, I
think so
was
too.
surprised when you thought it was Proud Boys driven, but yeah, I think that COVID. I mean, and it's
a combination, I'm sure.
Steeped in COVID, because it was the research I was doing to finish my PhD, and it was that talk about the classic example of bad faith from both sides, and the unfortunate position I was in was kind of calling balls and strikes on both sides, and that just makes you hated by everyone.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
It was so obvious to find the flaws with things that were being said on the left, and so obvious to find the things that were the flaws are being said on the right, but there was no admission. I mean, try to get someone who's a progressive to admit that we probably butchered the policy of play outdoors during COVID. That you had caution tape around playgrounds, and that despite the fact that kids had suffered very little risk with COVID, we didn't reopen schools quickly, and now there's these learning losses that the kids are suffering from years later. But if you mention that stuff, you're persona non grata. And similarly on the right, there's a purity test now. If you don't pass the purity test, then you're not part of the team. And that incentivized tribalism and bad faith even more. So this stuff, the incentives are so bad.
Yeah, I think that we keep circling back to that word, the incentives. And I think it's true. From my perspective, if you want to be a person of high influence, it's really, really, really hard to fight the incentive machine. And the incentive machine is saying rage bait. It's saying to go out and speak in platitudes, basically insult the intelligence of your audience at every turn, and you will grow. And we talked about this yesterday. We were talking about all the different influencers that we've come across, and I large in part consume a lot of the guys that align with my own personal beliefs. If you're speaking about discipline, if you're speaking about healthy, strong-willed, determined individualism, then I tend to gravitate towards that stuff. But I do it very much differently now than I did in my 20s and 30s, when it was just kind of a hoorah, let's get after it type of thing, which for what it's worth, I think there's value to. I do think that there are a lot of people out there that just need to get told to get off their ass. But I see the Hormozis of the world and the Gary V's. These two are very similar examples in what they're trying to do and what they're trying to accomplish, and very opposite in the way that they're messaging, right? And I kind of just feel bad for the audience, because they're projecting something that was largely just born out of luck. And they're now presenting it as a template where you too could find yourself owning dozens of businesses. And I think that they're the least egregious of what's out there. I think the Grant Cardones of the world, I always forget this, Ty Lopez of the world. These guys are literally just selling pyramid schemes, And the way to do it is to take hope and rage and just combine the two. You know, it really just, it's like take hope and divide your audience in a way where the people who don't buy in are the ones that are villainized, and you just like have a recipe for success. Like, it's Vertucci in a nutshell. Like, of course this is how he approached growing HCL. Of course he sought after every single person who said, hey man, we don't think you're on the up and up right now. And he just said, get him. You know, because that's exactly how he built his real estate business. That's precisely how you get people to pay $30,000 to learn how to go buy homes, you know, in a masterclass type of thing. So it's like all of it makes sense, and we're seeing it bleed over into poker more so now than ever. And again, it's at that harmless stage, but it's also so clear that it's like it's blooming more into like, well, this is what works. Like, it's the A/B testing, right? You know, you just follow Chance's tweets. There'll be one where it's like he's calling people shit regs, and then one where he's just like, you know, kind of like patting them out. Like, if you think variance is tough today, just wait till you overcome it tomorrow. And it's like this big enlightening thing. It's like, okay, well, which one gets more engagement, you know?
Is that a Chance tweet generator? Because that sounds really good.
Right. I actually have my ChatGPT programmed to Chance. But yeah, it's like, you know, I always approached the social media game, the influencer game. Like, I always approached it in the most Charles Barkley type of way possible. Like, I ain't your idol, you know. I'm not your hero. I'm not meant to be. I'm just a dude. Guru. Yeah, I'm just a dude who has seen some shit and is willing to share. And I've always tried to be as honest as I possibly could throughout that process. And I have to tell you, from my own personal anecdotal experience, there's no reward to that. I mean, there's reward in the like local level of like somebody will come up to me and share something with me that they feel comfortable sharing that they may not share publicly or something like that, or say like, you helped me in this way. That's insanely rewarding. But I'm saying at a global level, like a bigger picture, like you do not get bigger than Doug Polk through that path.
No.
Clearly.
That shouldn't be the concern, though. Yeah. I mean, like, I hope that you're not trying to, you know, monetize or capitalize like having good values, because I think that there's value.
There's no money in it.
Be authentic. Like, being authentic has paid dividends to me, and I get so many DMs from people like, hey, I really appreciate, you know, the way you conduct yourself, or you said something that I wasn't comfortable saying, and like, you know, you gave voice to something that I thought was really important, and so on and so forth. And so I think that, yeah, you're like not going to get paid, but you're going to be able to sleep at night.
Yeah, it's not a monetary thing. I'm not measuring this in monetary return. I'm measuring it in reach. The fact that like Polk still has more reach than Galfon, to me, is a clear indication that the system's broken.
But I think you should care about depth as much as breadth. And I think breadth, you're right, Doug's got you crushed. But I think there's an opportunity for depth there. Like, no one's engaging with Doug on a deep level. That's right. That's not the game that he's playing. I think that there's an opportunity to engage with. There's you know, in terms of the list of influencers, I'm trying to remember. There's a person that talks about might be like Derek Sivers or something, who's been highlighted on Tim Ferriss's podcast, but talks about how you only need like 1,000 true fans. That's sufficient to build a business and a brand around, because it's their, you know, if you were able to cultivate a really strong connection, that's going to be worth a lot, you know, going forward.
That I can for sure attest is true. Like,
yeah, and I think that's an attainable number. That's something that can happen from, you know, just being like offering something of value to the world.
Yeah, I guess my mind just always works at scale, and it's not about me or Doug in this instance. We're proxies for the larger thing. But it's like, you know, when Sam Harris is not as big as Joe Rogan, for example, that's a problem.
I wrote down Sam Harris as someone I wanted to mention on the list of like honest brokers that are doing it right. And actually, you mentioned earlier about how there's this perverse snowball that, you know, once you start to go, you know, shift left or right, that you get captured by your audience. Like, the audience capture is a real thing. And Sam has managed to avoid that by not going with advertisers and being completely user supported, and then asking people to pay what they're willing to.
Yeah.
Or if you're financially, unable to pay for a subscription. Oh, sweet. I got that right. Score. Oh no, it's Kevin Kelly, not Derek Sivers. Sam's a great one. And then one more name, not to, pile on too many people, but the writer Scott Alexander, used to be called Slate Star Codex and is now Astral Codex 10, has a Substack. He was actually Substack's largest, the largest advance ever paid by Substack was to this guy. I think he's the best writer on the internet. I would put him up there, in like kind of maybe Tim Urban's category, but I think another person that's worth, and hopefully, like, if you add these names to someone's list of their curated feed, then maybe it crowds out like some of the bad faith actors. That's
not in Instagram's world, buddy. Not in Instagram's world.
I'm gonna. It's not often that I want to be naive, but I'm gonna be content to be naive in this area and just hope, be optimistic that maybe if we promote the right voices, the right people, the right arguments, that maybe the cream rises to the top, and maybe, the marginal person who's choosing between listening to Joe Rogan and Sam Harris chooses Sam Harris.
Yeah,
I will. Looks back.
I will say that I do think it's a good thing that some people like I would consider Peter Attia a derivative of Sam Harris in some regards. Like, they're friends, they clearly work together, they're both brilliant, they're both intellectuals, they lead with science-backed information, and Attia leans much harder into the socials. Like, I can scroll through Reels or even TikTok or whatever, and I can come across Peter Attia. I'll never see Sam Harris. And
that's
for better or for worse.
I mean, he left Twitter because of a beef with Elon, and I think he felt like it was having a negative impact on his life. And that's the other thing that's happening with Twitter specifically, is you have this kind of distillation of views where it's become more right-leaning. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when Twitter was kind of seen as left-leaning, but it's become more right-leaning as, like, the moderate people have been plucked off and have gone either off social media or over to Blue Sky. And then what's left is worse, which is then going to lead to this, like, selection effect again. And it's just going to get progressively worse over time. Maybe it reaches equilibrium. But I understand Sam wanting to do that. But Sam's primary goal is not to get as many listeners as possible. I think he's, like, trying to do his own thing, hope it works out, and not go insane in the process.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that maybe personally I just struggle with the most. It's like, if you are a Sam Harris type, you should be trying to have as much influence as an Elon Musk type. Like, I just think that there's so few of those, one of one or, maybe one of 10 type of geniuses in each generation. And it's unfortunate, especially in today's day and age. It's like, if you trace things all the way back to, like, the Renaissance and maybe even further back than that, and granted, history is written by the winners, so who knows what it was actually like in real time back then. But it's like, we're aware of Socrates, we're aware of Plato, we're aware of these philosophers who were also scientists and mathematicians, and they were the ones laying the groundwork for what is today's math and science and STEM studies. I don't think that societies ever evolve out of that, right? Like, we'll never lose our thinkers, but somewhere along the line, the mechanism to, I guess, revere them and to bolster their claims and promote them and things of that nature has changed drastically. And again, this kind of something we can end on, but, like, the incentive structure is not what it was in the days of yore, where you were just revered for being an intellect, and the incentive was to discover, to experiment. And maybe I'm over exaggerating that, because I know a lot of these guys did face heavy scrutiny. I can't remember off the top of my head. Maybe it was Socrates, but one of them was, like, put to death. because of their beliefs. Like, you know, I guess
Galileo?
It might have been Galileo. Yeah.
No, Socrates was exiled, or he was given the option of exile or drinking hemlock.
Or death. Yeah. He drank the hemlock. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
So like, you know, maybe I'm romanticizing what it was like. Maybe it was a lot more similar to what we're actually seeing today, where you know, the great thinkers are often ostracized and painted into a specific corner where it's like, no, you're blue or you're red or you're incel or you are, you know, this, that, or the other. And I just worry that the incentive structure is so broken that we don't actually overcome it. We just continually get bad science. We continually get processed foods and what the government's kind of been stuffing down people's faces for the last 3, 4, 5 decades.
I think it's always been hard to be a radical. I mean, I think the philosophers were always persecuted. I think a really interesting case study is Martin Luther King Jr., who everyone recognizes as a hero now, but people don't realize like what the public perception of him was in the time that he lived, and it was terrible. I mean, he was only liked by a small fraction of people. I wish I had the percentages in front of me, but it wasn't even close. I mean, Bernie Sanders was like Taylor Swift compared to how Martin Luther King was perceived.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's the revisionist history that happens, I think. And so I think unfortunately it's always going to be this way. I don't know. I want to push back a little bit on you saying like Sam needs to work harder, because I think that's just demanding too much of someone who doesn't owe the world anything. I mean, you and I owe the world as much as he does in terms of like our effort level, and everyone could do more, you know, and maybe our responsibility is to like signal boost Sam so that the content that he does choose to produce is viewed by more people. I mean, I got flamed maybe a year or two ago when I was saying that there's a lot of poker content creators that should stop creating content and just boost the better content that already exists. And man, did I get dragged. I don't think I've ever gotten so dragged. Maybe when I got in a battle with Talib Kweli several years ago, where he called me a racist, but that.
Oh my God.
For another day.
Dan was a part of that too. That was incredible.
Yeah. It was a brutal several days.
Yeah. Our most popular vlog that we ever had made was Doug Polk Retired Me. And it was this like 9-minute intro bit that Pigtail shot where I had been like laying in bed for months because we had like a 2-month stretch where we didn't put a vlog out, and it was after this whole thing had happened at Live at the Bike in 2017 where the game fell apart, and Doug just like went on Facebook Live, and Ryan Feldman was on there, and they just basically trashed me and Josh Machaccio or whatever fucking Vertucci's best friend is, basically saying that we were the sole reason that the game collapsed. Meanwhile, like, you know, a dozen people backed out, but whatever. So we just kind of went dark for a while, tried to take the high road. I took the blame on Twitter. I said, like, you know, that's on me. I should have brought more money. I wasn't prepared. Like, apologies, whatever. And Doug had his fun. He put out like a half dozen videos in that 2-month span. So we finally did this bit of Doug Polk Retired Me. And it's just me in like a robe, disheveled, beard grown out. I have cups lined up in my bedroom, and you know my friends are there trying to like wake me up, and they're like, "What's with the cups?" And they look at it and they smell one. They're like, "It's piss. The bathroom's right there."
Oh, so good.
And then at the end, I'm finally getting to the punchline of all this. At the end, they just shoot a solo shot of Dan sitting in a beanbag chair. And he's like eating a protein bar, and like, so you want to talk about the Khalib stuff?
Oh man! If anyone hasn't seen that, it's still up there on our YouTube page. Just go check it out. It's amazing.
But the reference that Barber's making, and the one that I was making of Dan, is this must have been like end of 2017. I don't remember what Talib had tweeted, but somehow the entire poker community had gotten involved, where he was calling them all racist.
Right. It was, yeah.
Do you remember the crux of the conversation?
Oh man.
I feel like Slay was part of it.
Sure, of course.
I definitely remember that. I don't remember. I mean, I got to tell you, like, I was dating a girl at the time, and she was like beside herself. she was like, oh my God, like you once you get this label of a racist, like you're never going to be able to escape it. You're going to be canceled for life. And so I think there was like a 24-hour period where she had me convinced like it was never going to be the same. But then of course, like social media always does, like 15 minutes later, there was something else and it completely disappeared.
Yeah, he was Dr. K before Dr. K had existed in our little space.
Talk about another bad faith actor.
Man, don't get me started. I could do a whole fucking episode on honestly, like that notion that you just had where you were like, for 24 hours I had this feeling of life was never going to be the same. There was like a 4-month window during, I think it was like during COVID or like right towards the end of COVID, where for whatever God unknown reason, people who I have a lot of respect for in this industry and as just people as a whole were signal boosting the fuck out of this woman. And she was taking it upon herself to just lay flames to anybody and everybody who had a platform that she thought she could like punch up on. And I was just like target number fucking one. And this went on for like years. And then that Rachel Lease pseudonym, who we still to this day have no idea who it actually was. It was a man, but we don't know who. He like jumped on board and had just decided, like, we had like plenty of back and forth where we had like, you know, very reasonable conversations, and he had decided we had a debate. It wasn't even a debate. We had a dispute about economics, and I was on the side of saying that like it's not, it was something to do with the World Series, and I was basically saying that like something to the effect of like them running, you know, these very inexpensive multi-flight type of tournaments leads to a bad customer experience, and it doesn't really curate that much bigger of a bottom line. I think that was the heart of the conversation, and he had dug in on the fact that their costs are fixed, therefore running that over like, you know, a 10K one was more beneficial than the other. I can't remember which side of the line we fell on. Anyway, whether it was a misunderstanding or I was wrong or he was wrong, it doesn't really matter. It was that like for him, he was having that moment of Ayala on the whatever pod where he thought I was Andrew Wilson, and he just thought I was so stupid in this moment that he like throws full support behind Dr. K, who like months later then they have this like heated beef on Twitter where it all comes collapsing down, and he's calling one of them, either Dr. K or Alex Jacobs' wife, calling one of them anti-Semitic, and they're calling him a misogynist, and it was just this whole and I was finally at that point I was Elmo with the fire behind me.
Just kick your feet up at that
That's right, boys, let it all burn. But for like 3 months, my roommates can attest to this, for like 3 months every day it was an issue for me. Like every day that I would log on, it was this underlying it was this like undercurrent where, you know, again, it was because certain people that I had a lot of respect for were social boosting them, signaling them, and like supporting a lot of their messaging. It really had me day over day over day over day, like questioning, like, what am I missing? Like, I'm dead wrong here.
I remember this moment in time. I was at your house. We were in the sauna, and you were like despondent over like the interactions you had. And I also bring this up to remind you that I was telling you then that you were in the right. They were 100% wrong, and I knew this would fade eventually.
But you also know the people that I'm talking about that were like very much boosting that. And I don't want to throw anybody under the bus because, like, again, I have tremendous respect for them.
It was a lot of people. You don't even need to pick out names. I mean, there was I understand the temptation to be sympathetic to progressive voices, but there is a limit. And the thing is, I think that we have seen numerous examples. We were alluded to COVID earlier, but I think some stuff on race and gender. I think some of the stuff with regards to transgender issues. Like, I think there's shades of gray on some of these issues, and if you point that out, then I think you are labeled as a misogynist or a racist or sexist or whatever. And I don't think that's an appropriate way to respond, provided that you're the person who's approaching these discussions in good faith. And that's something you need to be able to signal credibly. Hopefully that, the people here, like we have that credibility. And, when you ask a question, about race or sex, or other, maybe controversial issues, Israel, Palestine, like, I think that you should be able to ask questions in good faith and not be labeled as, as a terrible person.
I saw like a meme or something, and it was like these two people talking to each other, and the one girl says to the other girl, she says like, I think I'm actually leaving the Democratic Party.
Oh yeah.
And then everyone says, "Oh, so you're a racist now?"
Right.
Right. And it's just like that's how some people feel on like a certain side, right? And that's kind of probably why the pendulum has swung so far one way and it swings so far the other way. And
I think to that point, incredible job, Guapo. Jesus Christ, I'm glad I shaved my head.
Never grow hair, Berkey.
To your point, I do almost think that the divide and conquer strategy of attacking the people who are acting in good faith, as opposed to the litany of people that are bad. Like, they didn't bother with Blazarian or with Polk or with D-Negs because they already felt like they were such bad faith actors that anybody who was on their side couldn't be swayed. But because I was, at least in my opinion, presenting myself in good faith, my audience is most susceptible to being kind of changed as I change. So if they attack me and I succumb, then all of a sudden it's like you get my audience with it, because now I'm bolstering your message. And man, it was a lot, like he's right. I was very... I came to him a lot where it was just like, where am I missing the point here? Like, where am I not allowed to express curiosity? Where am I not allowed to ask questions and all this other type of stuff? And it was a lot of like, honestly, it's probably a good exercise for everybody to have to go through, minus the whole social pressure of being canceled or whatever. Right. But it is an enlightening trail to go down to have to look inward and like kind of steelman a lot of the beliefs that you may hold or the opinions that you are public about and the questions that surround them. You need to be able to defend that kind of stuff. But man, what a weird time for social media. And I think it's the exact same now, just it's swung in the other direction. Like, as somebody who kind of never really cares about either side and sees points for both and big misses for both, I can feel the Overton window has like shifted heavily in the opposite direction.
Which direction?
Like towards conservatives now, like away from progression.
Yeah, I think that the thing that's really hard to understand these days is like the traditional like left-right spectrum doesn't feel like it captures the
It feels weird to say conservative, right? Because I don't think that's the right label.
The axis is like orthogonal to it. Even if it can even be defined as an axis, because to be supportive of the GOP today largely means supportive of Trump. There's not like support of the GOP outside of Trump. I'm not aware of it existing, and that's weird for me as a former conservative. Like, you could be supportive of the party but not the president, and vice versa. But I don't know what the party stands for now. Like, they're for reducing the deficit, but like are rolling out this massive tax cut, which is going to far exceed any amount of savings that could be derived from budget cuts. They want to be isolationist, but also like we want to own Gaza. I can't make sense of it, and unfortunately, if I try to figure out what like a person who is a MAGA or Trump supporter, if I try to pin them down on what are your principles, what are your values, what is a view that Trump could espouse that would cause you to lose support, they don't have answers for any of these questions. And I think that's like a good heuristic to determine whether or not you're speaking with someone who's acting in good faith, is like, if you don't have a good answer to what would change your mind on this topic, then we're probably done. Because you should have an answer to that. You have a responsibility to have an answer to that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good metric. And yeah, honestly, maybe this actually is the end of the two-party system, because in my mind, like, Trump doesn't fall in either camp. I think he just represents chaos. And I think for a lot of us, and I would even consider throwing myself in that arena, maybe a little bit less so than people who are radical about it. But like, when's a shakeup not good? You know, I mean, you know,
Wow.
it could go really badly.
Wow.
It could go really.
How
really
much
poorly.
you shake it?
Yeah, of course. You could break the snow globe altogether.
I'm sympathetic to that view, but I also think that we should be mindful of like which things should be shaken up and which things should not.
Yeah.
And I actually think like shaking up the economy of the world's, you know, the largest superpower that the world has ever known, we shouldn't be doing that so callously.
Feels very Roman Empire-esque.
Yeah.
Or removing all foreign aid just indiscriminately and just like, let's rip the Band-Aid off and, you know, we'll see where the chips fall. Like that's crazy. That's not how serious people approach politics. You should approach it like with pen and paper, and it's like, okay, where are the leaks in our budget? Let's figure out where the money is going.
Non-serious.
Or which programs.
Yeah.
I mean,
non-serious is a really good adjective for what I feel like is currently occurring.
Yeah, but that's kind of like, it's both parties when it comes to like this cutting and reducing the deficit, because they both say they want to do it, and neither one, like you said, are going to touch entitlements. They're not going to touch defense, and that's where you have to start. And if you're not going to touch them, and then right, so like, what are we going to do? We're going to trim around the edges, and it's not going to accomplish anything.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's bad incentives, because you can never get elected if you say you're going to cut the budget or increase taxes. Right. You certainly can't get reelected. So it's like the thing that you might hope to sneak into a second term. It's unfortunate. I mean, I think it was France that like tried to raise the retirement age. I forget if they were successful or not, but there were like
riots in the street. Yeah,
there were riots, and like we probably need to do the same. We probably need to figure out how to like improve the health of everyone in the country. Like, and I need this commitment. So I'm going to get this. I'm going to publicly express this now. I am writing a letter to RFK that I'm going to publish on what I think he could do at this moment. It will largely be just to get some ideas I have in my head.
He got confirmed today, right?
I feel like it should be happening any minute now.
I think it happened.
Certain. Yeah. I think he has an opportunity, and I think he has some really great ideas, and I think he has some truly fucking terrible ideas, and I really hope he leans into the good ideas. But yeah, like if you really want to figure out how to save the U.S. budget, you get everybody healthy as fast as possible. I think that's a really the least debatable option.
Agreed.
All right, Barber. We could do this all day. I appreciate you, my man. If no one else got value out of this, I certainly did. Hopefully the audience had a few points here and there that they gravitate towards as well. Thank you as always for joining us. I'll be in touch. We'll get the next one set up. That's going to do it for us today.
Thanks, Barber.
Thank you, Barber.
Bye, guys.
That's going to do it for us today. We'll be back again tomorrow, noon Pacific, as always. We'll see you guys then.
Peace.